which is talking a little bit more about the actual races of the game. There's 3 races in Starcraft 2, and the reason why you want to choose the race is based off of your understanding of what the race does. Okay, so a lot of people ask, well, which race should I choose? And to address that question, I think that it's important to look at the differences between the races. Terran themselves, they have very high damage ranged units, and they tend to tech very quickly. So if you want to get to high tech units and play around with those a lot and have a lot of different units that you can use early in the game, I think Terran is a good race for you. And if you like to micro, I think that's very good style. Oh, good, we have a Axis. Axisius. I don't know exactly how to pronounce your name. I apologize. He's a Terran player, so he probably likes this sort of style where you have very high damage, tech quickly, micro heavy style of play. Protoss is a very people call them gimmicky because they tend to have they use their chrono boost towards one single idea and do it heavily. Usually they pick a very simple build idea and they push for it very hard. Just call you Axe. Excellent. I can do that. Axe. So, if you like to play Protoss, it means that you like to simplify your game towards one style, group all your units together, and go for very simple pushes, either on one side of the map or the other, and with very clumped up armies that are hard to kill. Zerg is a very scouting heavy type race. It's very important that you choose the right counters. There is no such thing as a soft counter for Zerg. There's only hard counters. If you try and do a soft counter, you will just die in the game. So Zerg, it's really important to know what your hard counters are and to always do your best to keep hard counters. Looks like a Protoss is different. They're all different, right? So you have to keep in mind that some people do very well with Protoss. As far as Zerg, there's a lot of macro management, such as spreading your creep, doing injects, and doing larva management, which is really important, sort of like as an upkeep aspect of Zerg, to keep them busy doing other things besides just building a few units at a time over and over again. A lot of people ask which race is the best. It turns out that people who play at the highest league right now struggle just a tiny bit more with Terran than the other 2 races. But not so much that it's terrible, but just a tiny bit more. For the most part, they're still winning a lot. You have players like Maru who cheeses a lot, or Byung who plays very aggressive styles, and they still managed to go 14-3, 14-4 inside the games. Here it looks like we have a question. Yeah, I get raped by Zerg every time I play them for some reason. The only battles I win are TVT. I don't know why. Do you have any idea? And the answer is yes. I have a lot of idea, and I think a lot of it has to do with when you play against Zerg, you don't know what their hard counter is countering, and they can get a lot of units really fast. So it's really hard to keep up with Zerg, and I'll explain a little bit more of that as I go along. Versus Protoss, they get really big units, and it's really hard to kill the big units. So you have to really focus on killing the big units, countering the big units, what they're doing. and I'll go over some. I'll probably just pick a stream or 2 on the internet and kind of start talking about their games and show kind of what they're doing that's good and bad. Explain what they're doing right or wrong. One player who is pretty good at Terran is Winner, and he does a lot of commentary. Winner's not good at Protoss very well at all, and Zerg, he's okay, but his Terran is really his strongest game, and he has some good tutorials as well that are more Terran specific. They'll probably help you, and I'll go over that more towards the end of where I'm going. Okay. So this is the Terran dilemma that you're going to run into versus Zerg and Toss. Okay, versus Zerg, they can get a lot of units really fast. So the big trick versus Zerg is how do I inflict damage and not fall behind in terms of the game. Okay, so most of your play is going to be designed around that idea of inflicting damage and not falling behind. Another important part versus Zerg is keeping track of which add-ons you have coming up and on what buildings are they going on. Okay, So in terms of when you're playing along, you may say, okay, I'm gonna go very bare. I'm gonna go a bio heavy style, and you may say, okay, at early on in the game, I want to have 2 tech labs and a reactor on my 3 barracks because I want to get my tech up early. So you can't attack until your tech comes up, because you've invested into your add-ons, which is not units, which pulls you behind. Another problem that you run into versus Zerg is that they have the ability to build up larvae. So even though they lose an army, they can quickly remax a lot quicker than a Terran can, just from building out of 8 barracks. So it is important that you do damage consistently and you don't fall behind, because if you do fall behind, they'll take a big battle and they'll remax and you can't keep up with them. Okay. Now versus Toss, it's very different from Zerg. The challenge versus Toss is figuring out how to scout what the Toss is doing, and to understand. So I have a question here. I'm going to stop for a second. Okay. The question says, do I have to play Zerg to understand how Zerg works? And the answer to that is not much. I would say that you'd probably want to play a couple games of Zerg, just kind of to figure things out. But really, what you want to do is kind of is in the beginning, just pick Terran and just stick with Terran, play lots of Terran, and try and figure out what timings work and stuff. It looks like that there's more to the question, like which buildings are which. So I think that's a good place to go towards the next thing. Maybe I'm not being explicit enough. So I'll go back to the game and I'll show some of the buildings, okay? So, actually, if you'll give me just one more minute, I'll... Oh, looks like... Nice. So, I still want to spend a little bit more time talking about Terran on this for a second, if you don't mind, and then I'll do that. So just that I have kind of a little bit more of the framework in mind before I jump into these styles, okay? So versus Toss, the important part is to identify the gimmick that Toss is trying to do. Usually, most builds are centered around a Reaper Scout early, usually a scan around 7 to 8 minutes, and then usually once you get out sort of a harass in units, usually you want to sort of use those to identify and constantly keep track of what the Protoss is doing in terms of the game. And usually they have one specific type of unit that you're trying to counter of the game. And so that unit may be Colossus, or they may be Immortals, it may be some sort of Warp Prism drops. And you have to figure out what that gimmick is, DTs, and try and counter that. And so that leads to choosing the right tech tree as you're moving along through the game. It's really important to have that scouting in mind so that you choose the tech tree in the right order. Now, I'll explain a little bit more about what that means in just a second, okay? So, in terms of the Terran tech trees, this is typically sort of how people describe Terran if you were to watch streams, okay? Now, usually people say that your tech trees are bio, mech, and cheesy sort of play. And it looks like I have another question from the chat, which says, how do I counter Cloaked Banshees? Okay. Cloaked Banshee play will come around 7 minutes, and I'll actually play a game and show you this in just a minute. And usually what you want to do is you want to build an engineering bay or build a Raven, and you want to have lots of Marines and units that sort of lead up to that sort of play, that you can keep the Banshees from killing most of your units. When they cloak, they invest a lot of money into the infrastructure to get up their tech that high. And when they... I'm sorry about that. And in addition to getting their tech up that high, they're sacrificing a lot of their economy to get that high. So what you have to do is you have to maximize those two things. You have to maximize your economy and be able to have enough detection to handle their tech and their play. And again, I'll show a game of that so you can see how that works, and hopefully that will help see how that works. Okay. Now, in terms of the tech trees, just to focus a little bit more, bio is centered usually around getting stim really early, and focusing on getting your upgrades. Yeah, you can add me. tag is Toke. My character code is 272, and you can add me, and we can even play while I'm doing this stream of explaining kind of some basic ideas of the game. So again, the bio play, your focus is usually around getting stim fairly early and getting upgrades for your bio. Your big advantage is that your units are very mobile. They can get around the map and they can keep from getting a lot of damage done to them. Bio is it consists usually by definition bio is focused mostly on marines and a lot of times you add other units such as widow mines or marauders to or tanks to sort of do some sort of damage with it. And again, the choosing when to attack is your build order is focused around when you have stim coming up and when your upgrades are coming up. Okay. Now the second style was what you call mech. Usually you build several factories, and usually they're based some way around having the damage of the Hellions to sort of kill off workers, to have something with where you use banshees to harass so that you have the time to get up your factories, and your army positioning is the most important part of mech play. It's very, very patience oriented because you have to say, I'm going to move across this spot, this large expanse, which is really, really hard for me to do anything with, to this spot that's really, really good to fight in. So it's really, really position heavy in terms of the style. Now the third style that a lot of Terran tech trees focus is they have some sort of special gimmick. That's yeah. If you have Wings of Liberty, it's fine. You can still play HOTS with a friend. Okay. Now the cheesy styles, if you look them up, there's things like the Marauder Rush, like Maru did against Flash in Pro League yesterday. There's Banshee Rushes, as you're well aware of, and then there's sort of a proxy 2-racks, which they do a lot against Zerg, or there's a 5-racks, where they just pull all their workers and go with Marines. Those are some sort of gimmicks that you can get lots of units and sort of beat other players with a very, very gimmick-oriented part of the game.